Opening the center creates immediate central pawn tension and prepares development. Developing a knight aggressively to control central squares immediately establishes dynamic play. Securing central space and challenging black's knight are the immediate goals. Establishing the pawn triangle prepares for solid development and fights for central space. Developing the knight here naturally supports a central pawn advance while preparing to castle, a sound positional principle. Boldly challenging the center, black initiates immediate counterplay and opens lines for their pieces. Doubling pawns creates immediate central tension, challenging black's pawn structure and opening new avenues for piece play. Breaking the central grip releases queenside pressure and opens lines for piece activity. Embracing central space, white aims to control the open lines and prepare a queenside expansion. Preparing a kingside fianchetto to eye the center and potentially challenge white's central pawn mass. Asserting central space and preparing to contest the d-file becomes paramount for white's development. Developing the bishop to g7 perfectly utilizes its diagonal and prepares for castling, while solidifying the queenside pawn structure. Securing the knight with pressure, white eyes potential imbalances and aims to disrupt black's pawn structure. Securing the monarch initiates a period of relative safety, preparing for potential counterplay. Solidifying the pawn center allows white to prepare for a controlled kingside development and potentially restrict black's pieces. Initiating a central pawn break after castling anchors the rook, preparing to contest the open e-file and potentially challenge white's central control. Repositioning the knight to d2 prepares for a potential kingside advance, bolstering the central pawn structure while keeping options open for regrouping. Solidifying the pawn structure and preparing to challenge the center, this move seeks to harmonize the black pieces. Reinforcing the central pawn structure and preparing for a potential kingside expansion provides solid development. Probing queenside space opens lines for piece activity, preparing for potential pawn breaks later. Solidifying the queenside pawn structure, this advance simultaneously seeks to restrict black's queenside expansion and potentially create opportunities on the flank. Bolstering the knight's position, this develops it to a more central square, preparing for potential nb6 or n4 advances. Castling solidifies the king's position, preparing for potential central pawn breaks and active piece maneuvering. Focusing on kingside safety and preparing a queenside initiative, this play aims to reinforce the center while keeping options open. Centralizing the queen enhances piece coordination, while eyeing the kingside and potentially bolstering a queenside pawn advance. Harnessing the knight's potential, this maneuver aims to outflank the center and pressure white's queenside structure. Shifting the bishop to f3 aims to pressure black's kingside and control the dark squares, potentially preparing for a central advance or a kingside attack. Black immediately creates a passed pawn threat and forces white's pieces to reorganize, disrupting their harmonious setup. Sacrificing the bishop clears the dark squares, aiming to exploit the weakened king's defenses and potentially control central files. Solidifying the dark squares and rerouting the bishop to the queenside diagonal offers vital defensive support and potential counterplay. Shrinking black's queenside space, this probe aims to restrict the knight's scope and potentially gain control of the c-file. Reasserting control of the central d5 pawn, the knight gracefully retreats, eyeing the weakened kingside. This piece exchange unexpectedly opens critical diagonals for your queen and bishop. Reclaiming central influence is the idea, but placing the bishop on this advanced square risks exposing it unnecessarily. Sacrificing the queen opens up critical central files, aiming for a swift knockout blow. The queen retreats, seeking safety and perhaps a less exposed position after white's aggressive pawn advance. Seeking to expand queenside space and avoid the d-pawn's future constraints, white initiates a repositioning for queenside control. Unlocking the kingside for active play, this pawn thrust aims to disrupt white's harmonious setup. A bold repositioning aims to reclaim central influence, though it risks loosening the kingside's defense. Aggressively challenging the pawn chain with g5 immediately aims to exploit white's cramped queenside and open lines for attack. Pressuring black's advanced pawns, this knight aims to dislodge their queen and disrupt their queenside structure. Aggressively pushing the pawn, black ignites a pawn storm, aiming to unravel white's kingside pawn structure and create attacking avenues. Repositioning the bishop to a more active diagonal addresses the pawn chain's control. Reorienting the queen to the kingside offers a subtle threat against white's advanced pawns. Dislodging that advanced knight opens a crucial outpost for your own pieces on the queen's side. Securing the king from the active knight and pawn storm now is paramount. Solidifying the kingside pawn structure, this prepares a potential kingside advance and reassures the king's safety amid black's aggressive pawn pushing. This pawn thrust on the flank seeks to generate attacking potential by expanding space, but it weakens the kingside significantly. Launching an assault on the kingside, this move gambles on creating attacking chances at the cost of structural weaknesses. Challenging white's centralized knight and seeking active piece play, this bold pawn sacrifice opens critical diagonals for the bishop. Striking at the queenside pawn chain, this maneuver aims to disrupt black's structure and open lines for white's rooks. Concentrating forces on the queenside with the rook aims to disrupt white's pawn structure and create queenside play. Exploring the weak squares on the queenside, the knight makes a tactical redeployment to attack targets. Ignites the kingside attack by creating immediate threats against white's vulnerable monarch and pawn structure. Securing the d-file finally allows white to challenge black's growing initiative. Sacrificing the bishop opens a crucial diagonal for your queen and king. Opening the file provides a clear avenue for your rook to infiltrate black's queenside defenses. Reclaiming the knight's influence on the queenside opens up critical counterplay. Opening the g-file with this capture unleashes potent attacking potential against the black king. Reactivating the bishop toward the kingside, aiming to create counterplay against white's potentially exposed monarch. The queen vacates the dangerous diagonal, seeking better placement and preparing to defend the weakened kingside. Exchanging queens now simplifies the position, opening up the kingside for a potential pawn storm advance by black. Reclaiming the b-file immediately after that exchange decisively opens lines for your rooks and asserts control over that crucial open column. Shifting the bishop to the queenside aims to disrupt white's pawn structure and potentially create counterplay on the open files. Reinforcing the e-file centralizes the rook for potential future central breakthroughs or defensive tasks. Reclaiming a central outpost for the knight offers black a more dynamic presence, potentially challenging white's entrenched pawn structure. Asserting influence over the c-file, this rook now eyes potential pressure on black's somewhat exposed queenside pawns. Seeking to activate the rook on the open file and challenge white's d-pawn, this move dynamically prepares for future central action. This pawn sacrifice aims to disrupt black's pawn structure and open lines for your pieces to attack. Trading bishops here simplifies white's position, giving them an open c-file and better control over the queenside. Reclaiming the passed pawn's potential, this recapture aims to untangle white's pieces and seize initiative. Unbalancing the pawn structure opens exciting avenues for counterplay. Recapturing the piece clears the path for white's rook to infiltrate black's position. Capturing that rook on c3 immediately resolves the material imbalance and offers a clear endgame path. Seizing an open file after the exchange, white aims to exploit black's disconnected pawns and potential king weaknesses. Unleashing a rook into the endgame's heart, this audacious maneuver seeks active counterplay amidst a collapsing structure. Simplifying the material count sets the stage for a rook endgame, where black's active knight may prove troublesome. The rook's return to the third rank significantly simplifies the material while maintaining pressure on white's weakened queenside pawns. Seizing the open file with the knight offers a clear path to victory by creating immediate threats. Recapturing the rook immediately creates an unbalanced position with dangling pawns. Forces an unavoidable king shuffle, exposing its vulnerable position on the dark squares.